Holiday tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
My top tip, not all gifts have to be for others. Treat yourself.
Crisp whites like a floral Sauvignon Blanc pairs perfectly with shrimp cocktail and other light appetizers. Now that's how you kick off a holiday meal.
Most adults smile an average of 20 times a day. Make that 21 for someone you love with the perfect bottle from Total Wine & More.
Whether you're entertaining or bringing the wine, Total Wine & More has you covered with 8,000 wines, 3,000 spirits, and 2,500 beers at always low prices. Cheers.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL. Football, yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Coller back here with former NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels. Sage, tell me the first thing that comes to mind when I say 24-17 Vikings over Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football.
So you're saying there's a chance. That's what I think about the Vikings. You know, I really thought after last week and that loss in Chicago that the Viking season was done, that they're not going to make the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Rick Spielman. There's going to be questions asked as to why he signed Kirk Cousins to such a big contract. And the fact that the Vikings didn't make the playoffs and, this, that, and the other, then it all changed. It changes with a nice win versus the Packers at home, a win they had to have. They're right in the mix now of being a playoff team. You still have a chance to catch Chicago, obviously, in the NFC North. So that game was all or nothing. And we saw the result on the opposite end. The Green Bay Packers, I believe, are done. They are not going to make the playoffs. They still should make a run here, and they have a very easy schedule to finish out. But I see them as a 8-7-1 football team at best coming out of this thing, and I think they're done for the season. They just don't have enough good players. They have had too many injuries. They don't have enough or don't use their weapons great on offense other than Devontae Adams. The Vikings. I don't know what it says about the Vikings quite yet. We're a good team, not a great team. I do not know how far we can go.
Well, that's a good point, because when they beat the Lions a few weeks ago, we said, nice win, but it's the Lions, and they seem like a mess. I think we also have to say that about last night's win. As good as it was, the Green Bay Packers, I think, are in a spot now where they have to fire their coach, whether it's now or if they wait till Black Monday at the end of the season. But when you can't get the football moved around the same way that Chicago or Los Angeles used misdirections and things like that, when you're still running the same offense from like 5 years ago that the Vikings seem to know how to shut down after about the first quarter, and then that's not even to mention all the decisions that were made in game that were just baffling by Mike McCarthy, that's a team that needs a lot of work to be a legitimate contender again. And I saw that in Aaron Rodgers' last 17 games, he's 8-8-1. I mean, that should just never happen considering how good he is. And he made some unbelievable throws last night, but it's not a sustainable model to just have your quarterback have to be not even human in order to win games. And I think if you're the Vikings, you should be thrilled at what the Packers look like, but also look at this win and say, yeah, you beat a pretty darn mediocre team by 7, and you ran up and down the field on a defense that is beat up and also bad.
Well, we saw it last year when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. The Packers were done. That was the end of their season. They no longer had the quarterback to put all of their sort of, all of everybody else's inadequacies end up being Aaron Rodgers trying to do more, and then probably even too much, and then sometimes even misses the easy throws like he does last night because he's trying to do too much. So flipping over to our team, the Vikings, the question is, how much do we want Kirk Cousins to do? Do we need him to be Superman and play like he played last night all the time to be successful, or are there other things they can do, i.e. trying to run the football, which they aren't successful last night, or as what we have been talking about on this show for weeks now, trying to do some other things offensively. Throw the ball to Kyle Rudolph. They did that last night. Throw a screen or two. They did that last night, one for a touchdown. Are there other ways they can win without Kirk Cousins simply straight dropping back in the pocket? And, they did some play action last night. Those types of things. The touchdown was a play action play. Those are things Kirk Cousins does well. Can they do more of those things, without the ability to run the football, it seems like? And, how far can they go with that recipe?
So with Cousins last night, it looked to me kind of like Pat Shurmur had dialed up that game plan with the number of rollouts that they had. The play that they threw a touchdown to Dalvin Cook was a Pat Shurmur play from 2017. He used it with Dalvin Cook against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 2 or week 3 last year. That exact same play, lining up Kyle Rudolph in the backfield and then having Cook swing out. And they need more of that, because I think at some point, maybe, Sage, they realized, and should have maybe known this before, that if you're asking Cousins to just straight drop back and beat people, it's not really that successful of a model. Like, you have to work around him the same way that you worked around Case Keenum in a lot of ways, except for he can make a lot better throws down the field. But some of the same philosophies have to exist. Getting Kyle Rudolph the ball on a little 7-yard pass or something. It's not going to turn into much more yards after the catch, but just moving the ball positively through the air, because, like you said, they can't run. I mean, they get 91 yards, but it's 3.1 yards a carry, and I think we're getting to the point where this offensive line just cannot create room for these running backs, because when Dalvin Cook is averaging 2 yards a carry, you know that it's really not on him. It's just these guys can't block for the run.
Yeah, and this is a real problem. The Vikings, and this is the difference between last year and this year. They don't really have, a lot of different guys up front blocking, most of the same guys from last year. Different O-line coach. Who knows how much that goes into the equation, but it's pretty amazing that the Vikings with, and also having Dalvin Cook back, and healthy, but they are, how much worse they are running the football than they were last year. And that is because of that, it creates all these other issues. How do we get the ball to Thielen and Diggs and Rudolph and the running backs in space? And, how do we move the ball and score points, because we can't run the football well at all? And in games like last night, man, you'd like to run the football to sort of finish out that game, and they couldn't do that. You had to throw it, and at some point you got to think that's going to come back to hurt this football team. I don't know how many quarterbacks or offenses in the history of the league have gone far in the playoffs and won Super Bowls with wherever the Vikings are ranked, with rushing the football, probably 27th, 28th in the league, and I just don't think Kirk Cousins is good enough to consistently carry this team, and particularly in the playoffs and probably on the road.
Yeah, I think that you can have a mediocre run game, but I don't know if you can have no run game whatsoever and then trust him in the playoffs to win a couple of games to get you there to the Super Bowl. And that's the thing, that the Kirk Cousins roller coaster is so real, right? I mean, last week against Chicago, the 2 interceptions, it was just like classic Cousins making mistakes and then racking up a bunch of yards at the end of the game when they were losing. But then this is also kind of classic Cousins, that when you go through all of his games, his career, there is a reason why the guy won a good number of games in Washington. There is a reason why they're paying him $84 million, because when he's on, he can be really, really excellent. And I thought last night was the best game that he's played because there were no turnovers. And he mentioned after the game that John DeFilippo had told him, basically, look, the people in this building have families, and they're going to lose their jobs if you keep throwing all these interceptions and fumbling this much, which is, I think, kind of a severe comment, but it's also true. I don't know if anything changes because he did that, but I think we saw the model for them that they're just going to have to try and distribute the ball to a bunch of different people and throw the swing passes and the screens and things like that. He's going to have to throw it 40 times because handing off just doesn't work.
Yeah, and sometimes they say the best, like as a GM, Andrew Brandt says on Twitter all the time, a lot of times the best deal you ever make is the one you don't make, when somebody signs somebody and they're a bad deal or whatever. But I think sometimes as a quarterback, the best play you can do is to not make the bad play. And that has been sort of the dagger for Cousins all year, and it seems like it's about once a game, sometimes twice a game. Last night it was 0. He didn't have that dagger play that just sort of drives you nuts and cost the team big time. And for whatever reason, his seem to be at these sort of crucial moments. You know, whether you're in the red zone or you're trying to make it back, or you know, you have the lead and you're trying to hold the lead, and there's a sack fumble, you know, something like that. But if he can protect the football better, you know, sort of can't go broke taking a profit, check the ball down, high completion percentage. We're really talking a lot about what the Sam Bradford game plan from a couple of years ago, right? Which means John DeFilippo has to get very creative with how he designs screens, how he designs pass patterns so the quarterback can get the ball out of his hands, high completion percentage, get it to all of his weapons, not take those sacks, not have to force the ball down the field, and you know, those types of things. Then the Vikings have a legit chance, but you know, them dropping back 7-step drops on first down and you know, trying to throw for 400 yards every game, I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
Yeah, and you know, the thing about that is, too, that the Green Bay Packers don't have a Khalil Mack or a Cameron Jordan or anybody who is going to ruin your game plan. They couldn't really get much pressure on Cousins even when they tried. So it just wasn't really something that will tell us a lot about how they're going to face playoff teams. It was more of just, you needed this win so badly to set you up the rest of the way. Because now they have to go to New England, that's tough. They have to go to Seattle, that's tough. But if they can find a way to split those, then they're in good shape to be a playoff team, and then we'll see where they go from there. So I think what this shows us, though, is that their model is going to be to try and do exactly what you're saying, to throw those short passes, to try and get the ball distributed more to Kyle Rudolph on plays like that, hit on a few big plays here and there, and then hope that their defense can just shut down the other team. It's just, the question is, can you really win that way? I asked Mike Zimmer this week, and I mean, it was more of a like, I hope so type of answer, but like, can you really win this way in the NFL now when the high-powered offenses are so good? They are better than they've ever been before in the history of this league. Like, can you really win the way that they won last night, which was in part with efficient offense and then also with great defense?
So I think at the end of the day, this Vikings team, they're a good team. They're not great. And a good team beat a below-average team last night with a great quarterback. Maybe worse than below average if you talk about 1 through 53 on that roster. A good team was not good enough to go to Chicago last week and beat the Bears, who are also a good or very good team, right? A good team beats the Lions pretty easily at home a couple of weeks ago, right? A good team doesn't beat the Saints, because the Saints are right now a great team. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm sort of at on the Vikings. I don't see them as a top 5, top 6 team in the NFL. I see them as a playoff team, but as of right now, I'm just not seeing a team that I can see advancing and winning multiple playoff games. Maybe one, but I think they're going to be right there at that edge when it comes down to these next 2 weeks are huge. I think they win these next 2 weeks, they might be able to close out the final 3 games. The next 2 weeks are Patriots, Seahawks for the fans at home. And then after that, and they're both on the road, then after that, home versus the Dolphins, at Detroit, home versus the Bears. The Bears may have the division locked up by then, and the Vikings are just, basically playing for the playoffs, and the Bears, may rest their starts. We don't know at that point, but I can see the Vikings win those last 3 games. These next 2 are going to be crucial.
Yeah, I mean, if they got 2 wins here, or even I look at it as just split these 2 games because they are so difficult. And then if you lose to Detroit or Miami, I mean, Miami's not a complete joke, but they're also not good. So if you lose to either one of those, you should be embarrassed. And then week 17, with the Bears coming to US Bank Stadium, it's a completely different story than going to Soldier Field, where the Vikings always seem to have problems. I mean, that kind of, it speaks to how big the next 2 weeks are, and just how big this game was, how badly they needed it. And I also think that Kirk Cousins,
by the way, I think this game that was a do or die game.
Yeah.
I think that game was, and I heard it sometime during the week, that game was the loser goes home, basically. By the way, did you see the stats last night? If the Packers lost that game, which they did, their chances of making the playoffs, they had a couple of different stats up there. I thought one was maybe 15% or something like that. It's very small. Well, the Vikings are, they're 9, or, they're 6-4-1, or they're 7, they're 6-4-1, correct?
Yes.
6-4-1. So if they have, 2 more losses, that puts them at 9-6-1, which would be the Packers. If they win out, that would be that's what they have to do. So they're, they can't afford too many losses here. 2 losses out of their last, 5 games at the very most. And so, I don't know if 9-6-1 gets in the playoffs. It's going to be right on the edge.
Don't you think also that Kirk Cousins and John DeFilippo badly needed that game for people to believe in them? I mean, I think after Chicago, the game plan was so poor, and they made so many mistakes, which we went over a bunch of times. But, I mean, just, Khalil Mack one-on-one with Riley Reif all night and straight dropbacks and things like that. That to have Mike Zimmer call out DeFilippo multiple times in press conferences on different issues he had with the offense, and then for Cousins, it was looking really bad. I mean, it was looking like the guy can't play in a big game without turning the ball over a few times. I think both of them needed that, not just for where they are in the playoff run, but also for where they're seen in the locker room, and the belief in both of those two who are kind of steering the entire ship on offense here.
Well, by the way, yes, I think last night, yes, definitely Kirk Cousins. He's talked about the most. John DeFilippo's not talked about as much. I do know this. The Vikings players, the offensive players, they loved Pat Shurmur. Mm-hmm. They really did. And, to be honest with you, Eli Manning it sounds crazy. He's having a really good year. He's having his best year. His quarterback rating is 96.2. Mm-hmm. He has not had a 96.2 or higher QB rating his entire career.
Really?
Even when he won Super Bowls. He is having statistically a career year. He's throwing for 69%. Eli has never been a high completion percentage guy. His average of his career, Eli, 60.3. 60.3 in his career. His average QB rating of his career, 84. Right now, he's throwing at 69%. He's got 14 touchdowns, 7 picks, and a 96 QB rating. So, Giants fans have been sort of going crazy because the Giants are terrible, and Eli has gotten a lot of that blame. Now, he does very little creating. Eli can't move at all. He is basically an iron deer in that pocket. But Pat Shurmur is doing some interesting things with him, Eli, this year, and they're having some success. At least he's having statistically, success, and even though it's not turned out to wins. Now, again, you're replacing that with John DeFilippo, who, as the question is out. We don't know. Is he the guy? Obviously, Mike Zimmer, he has to sort of give his offensive coordinator full authority. Like, you're running the show over there. It's your, it's the staff, it's the whatever, but it's your offense. He doesn't have a lot to do with it. And when they're not really pulling their weight, it's frustrating because there's not much he can do other than hire somebody else after the season. That's about the only thing, he can do. So yeah, that was a really big game, for John DeFilippo. I think there's some smoke there. I think it's because there is some fire there and there's some concern, not just amongst Vikings fans, but obviously in that organization. And that was some of that was calmed last night.
So do you see a way that they can be more efficient in using Dalvin Cook? I mean, whether it's the run game or just maybe throwing to him all the time as opposed to even handing it off to him. I mean, they run between Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook 21 times and average 3 yards a carry on those handoffs. And I get with Latavius Murray at the end of the game, hammer him up the middle, but, Dalvin Cook catches 3 passes. He is one of the most dynamic players with the football, I think, in the whole league. And so getting him the ball 3 times through the pass, I mean, that's something that I think they could even still do better.
Listen, 3 times for 47 yards and a touchdown on 3 targets. That's pretty good. And maybe they got to do more empty, type stuff. Or again, play action with a screen to the running back. Or just straight drop back screens, slow down that rush any way possible. Or go empty, bring the rush, but get the ball out quick. And one of those guys could be Dalvin Cook, in the slot, or just running a hitch route out there, one-on-one with a safety or something. This guy needs to be a part of this offense more and more, and not just from the sort of the eye back position and, handing him the ball. Because he's so fast, and you saw it last night. Latavius Murray probably makes that catch into a 12 to 14 yard screen route. Mm-hmm. Cook takes it to the house because he just outruns everybody, and it doesn't seem like it, but you just see people sort of have the angle, and then he's gone. And you saw it last night. They got to find ways to get him ball in space more.
So let me ask you this, and then just a quick couple questions on some other things, not Vikings related. But do you trust Kirk to be able to repeat this performance in Seattle, in New England, against Chicago week 17, or do you think we're just going up and down with him? Like, was there something that they found last night that you could just keep repeating so he's not turning the ball over, and so he's hitting on some big plays to Diggs and Thielen, but working the ball around much more? Do you think that that's like the philosophy that's just going to work, or was that kind of a really good blip when we've also seen the bad blips?
I think they didn't play against Khalil Mack last night.
That's very true.
Right. They didn't play against these, a premier player, and that very much helps. The Saints defense is number 1 in the league against the rush, which means a lot of 3rd and long situations, which means Cameron Jordan, and that, those good pass rushers. I think that's what the Vikings, we're dealing with, a team that didn't have that premier player. And, the question is, what does Bill Belichick do this week? My guess is that he tries to pressure Kirk Cousins. Now, the Patriots never have these great pass rushers, but I think they see when Kirk Cousins has pressure on him, when he's dropping back, that, he gets in trouble. So, we'll see. I just don't think the Vikings, I don't think Kirk is good enough to put on that performance against really good defenses consistently without making some sort of mistake. And I think he played great last night, but I think that mistake is bound to happen when you have Khalil Mack or somebody like that, who they will have, Aaron Donald, whoever it might be when this playoff run happens.
They will. So let me ask you the same question that I asked Mike Zimmer. Do you like when you watch on Thanksgiving the Saints going completely bananas on offense? Do you like a 51-54 game? Is that Zimmer said it wasn't his cup of tea, which I'm sure shocks everyone. Do you like it? Is that your kind of football game?
I don't know. That's a good question. Did you see there was a college football game that was like 74-72 or something? Texas A&M.
Did you see how that played out? It was like 31-31 or something. It went to 7 overtimes, and then they just kept scoring.
Do you like those games? I don't know. And I'm a Big 12 guy. It's interesting, you play in Iowa State, you follow the Big 12, and Oklahoma's beating Texas Tech, whatever it is, 62-52, and these crazy high scoring games. And this year, Iowa State and last year, their defense has been really good, and it's been really fun to watch good defenses. And because good defense, they play together. It's a very, very, sort of group oriented, the hustle and the sacrifice and getting guys down and guys really pushing the envelope with the effort. That effort is really fun to watch when guys are really sort of living on the edge there. And it's been fun to watch for me as an Iowa State fan. So I do enjoy really good defenses, the energy it brings to the team when defenses are dominant. I enjoy offenses that execute, and are creative and get guys in space and, obviously score points and all those things. But, the energy and the, just having a good defense, I think to watch a good defense sort of overwhelm an offense, that to me, that is fun to watch.
Yes. I like when you see the other team's quarterback, like Aaron Rodgers last night in the second half, look completely defeated, frustrated. They're walking off the field because your defense has just smothered them. And that is fun to watch when it's your team and you're just watching your defense beat up on someone. But then, entertainment value, if you're getting, Ron Rivera said he wouldn't mind a 7-6 game. It's like, okay, Ron, that sounds like a barrel of monkeys, right? Just, having that, time after time, I don't think maybe would be that great.
Well, listen, if soccer games were 11-9, would they be more interesting than they are 2-1, right? That's just sort of the question that we're having here. I'm not sure, I'm not sure if that's the answer, but, either way, good execution football is fun to watch when there's a lot of really tight contested plays, when, the tackling's not sloppy and this, by the way, this is why everyone's trying to protect the quarterback, because, everyone knows that, well executed offenses are more fun to watch and higher completion percentages and those types of things. And the 3 and outs are a complete bore and people turn off the TV. So either way, just good execution, tight competitive plays. But by the way, I was thinking when you were talking, Aaron Rodgers, by the way, from the start of that game last night, I've never seen him have less energy.
Yeah.
Less energy. And it was so obvious on TV. He looks like he looks like he is like sort of unhappy, and like there just was no positive vibe going on there last night. And that's he looked defeated before the game started, and I had never seen that before.
Yeah, every shot that they were showing, the close-ups of him, because where I sit in press box, there's a TV right above me, so I could see the play over again, and every shot that they would show of him after a play, he was either just sort of frowning or making like no facial expression. He wasn't even jogging off the field really. It was just like a slow walk off the field if they had a 3 and out. He really, past the first quarter of that game, he was almost like a non-factor. And that's something that you can never usually say about him. But it felt that way last night. It even felt like when they were talking about, we can't give Rodgers the ball back at the end of the half. That's why they botched the clock. They decided to let the clock run down to set up a 51-yard field goal that turned into a 56-yard
by the way, the TV version last night was in complete agreement with that. When they had that 3rd down to run some clock, because if they don't get a 1st down, you don't want to give Rodgers the ball back. And so Chris Collinsworth thought the Vikings played that perfectly last night, which you will say the chance of getting a touchdown are pretty slim. Getting a field goal attempt, they did everything sort of right. Not giving Rodgers the ball, getting a field goal attempt, they make the field goal. Aaron Rodgers looked defeated last night, and from the beginning of the game to the end, and it feels like he's carrying a lot of extra baggage and extra weight, mentally, emotionally. Who knows from what? Obviously, you would think just football, but there's other aspects of his life which I'm sure are challenging. If you follow the TMZ type nonsense. His brother sort of called him out, last week with the forest fire stuff, and there's a whole family thing there. So it felt almost like he had the weight of his, weight of the world on his shoulders last night. Not a lot of positive energy coming from Rodgers.
So, and that's part of the reason that I thought, with Kirk Cousins completing like 90% of his passes there in the first half, and they can't stop Thielen and Diggs, why are you just not being as aggressive as possible when Aaron Rodgers isn't playing really like Aaron Rodgers? You're kind of giving him the respect, but he's not really performing that way. So even if you had to punt the ball away from your 40, let's say it goes down to their 20 with no timeouts for the Packers, that he's just probably not leading a touchdown drive there. So I thought that letting the clock run down and eventually setting up your own 50-yard field goal was a misplay by them, that they should have been a little more aggressive there.
Yeah, no, I see that. It's an interesting, the Packers just are not that dangerous. I think there's like there's like a thing that we think the Packers are this really super dangerous offense, and that's just not the case anymore because they basically have Devontae Adams, and that the other guys are not making a lot of plays.
Right. Last thing. The Baltimore Ravens have won their last 2 games with Lamar Jackson playing quarterback. Listeners of the podcast will know that I really liked Lamar Jackson, and I liked the Ravens getting him with the 32nd pick. I thought it was a steal. He comes in, he wins his first 2 games, not against great teams, runs for around 200 yards in those games. Can they actually win with their quarterback averaging 100 yards rushing a game?
I think they can. I mean, this is a different style of football, and the Bears are sometimes playing it. Trubisky sometimes will. He sort of does more with his legs than he does with his arm in some of these games. And we saw Josh Allen do it also yesterday, getting a win with more of his legs. I don't think it's like it's not a 15-year sustainable, say recipe or equation or whatever. It's not, I don't think you do it for long term, but short term, I do think you can win a lot of football games. I mean, Tim Tebow won a lot of games and he really couldn't throw the football much at all. So I think Lamar Jackson his speed is really incredible. Mm-hmm. And it's hard on the defense when you have a running back or a quarterback who can run the football really well. It just is hard on a defense. And obviously the Ravens are making full use of that, not relying on his arm as much, but relying on his legs to win. Yeah,
I'm really interested to see how that goes. And I wonder if they had started him from the very beginning, because Flacco looked good in preseason, had a couple of decent weeks, and then just kind of returned to being the older, injured, slow Joe Flacco that he's been. And I wonder if they had used Lamar Jackson the whole time, how that would have looked for them, because now they're sort of just a mediocre team. But
I don't know, but it's probably good that he did sit right away. I think it's really tough for a rookie quarterback week 1 or first couple weeks of the year to be thrown out there. You sort of see what that veteran has to go through the first half of the year, and right. And then you'll learn. I think you'll learn a lot in those games.
Oh yeah, that's true, and I'm very interested to see where his career goes, because I think that he can throw the ball. And I think he can work through reads and things like that he did in college. It's just going to take him a little more time because the throwing mechanics, not that I am a guru of it, but it was pretty obvious that they are not where they need to be. But if he improves that over the next few years, I think he can be an unbelievable talent.
I really do think you can. I really do think you can improve as a thrower, as an accurate thrower. I feel like I really improved my rookie year as my career went on. As an accurate, quarterback. I was a 52% thrower in college, and I think my career I was 64 or something like that overall. So I really do think you can get better as a thrower. The more you understand defense, the more accurate, thrower you are as well, because you can anticipate and things like that. So, I think he's got a future. We'll see, but, they're winning their certain way. And, back to the Vikings, can the Vikings go as far as that we hope they can go? With this formula that they currently have.
Right, yeah. Well, we'll talk about it more, look over the film, see what we can find that worked for them against Green Bay, and then you and I will get together on Wednesday. Thank you, Sage.
Sounds great.
And thank you all for listening to the Purple Podcast.
Holiday tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
Did you know there are over 1 million bubbles in a glass of champagne? Here's to a whole lot of celebrating.
I recommend pairing sweet foods with even sweeter tasting wines. This Thanksgiving, enjoy pumpkin pie with a delicious Moscato.
We have aisle upon aisle of party-perfect wines that are in your budget and out of this world. And I know where to find them all.
Whether you're entertaining or bringing the wine, Total Wine & More has you covered with 8,000 wines, 3,000 spirits, and 2,500 beers at always low prices. Cheers.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. The Midwest snowstorm is frustrating some returning Thanksgiving holiday travelers. The Weather Prediction Center's Brian Hurley says this storm is moving east.
Erie, Pennsylvania, and western New York. That would also include Buffalo. And also eventually into upstate New York, as well as northern New England. And over these areas, we are also looking for accumulations of 6 to 12 locally 15 or so inches of snow.
Retailers expect you to buy billions of dollars worth of merchandise on this Cyber Monday, much of it in the first 3 hours after you get home from work. Analyst John Copeland.
We expect over $1.2 billion to be spent online. That's as much that gets spent online through an entire typical day, any other day of the year, and we'll get it in a 3-hour window on Cyber Monday.
President Trump tweets the immigrants at the Mexican border are not coming into the USA, as he puts it. I'm Rita Foley.